Rita Chen stared at the sheet music on her piano stand and felt her stomach drop. Again. She'd been staring at the same simple folk melody for 3 weeks now, and every time she looked at it, she felt the same wave of disappointment wash over her. The notes were so basic, so plain, so utterly boring. She was 15 years old and had been playing piano since she was 7. 8 whole years of lessons, practice sessions, recitals, and theory classes. And this is what her teacher had given her to play at the spring concert? A melody that sounded like something from a children's music book? Rita slumped back on the piano bench and let out a long sigh. Through her bedroom window, she could hear her neighbor practicing violin. The music floating across the yards was complex and beautiful, full of emotion and technical brilliance. That's what real musicians played. That's what she should be playing, but instead she got this. Her phone buzzed on top of the piano. It was a message from her friend Sophie. Just finished practicing my recital piece. My fingers are killing me, but it's sounding pretty good. How's yours going? Rita typed back quickly. It's fine. Super easy, though. She didn't mention how embarrassed she felt about it. Sophie was playing something from a famous composer, something that would make people sit up and take notice. Meanwhile, Rita would be playing what basically amounted to musical elevator music. The bedroom door opened and her mom peeked in. Dinner's ready in 10 minutes, sweetie. How's the practice going? It's going, Rita said, not turning around. Her mom walked closer and glanced at the sheet music. Oh, that looks lovely. Is that the piece for the recital? Yep, play a little bit for me? Rita wanted to say no, but her mom was already settling onto the edge of the bed with that expectant look on her face. The look that said she'd driven Rita to lessons for 8 years and sat through countless practice sessions. So the least Rita could do was play 30 seconds of music. Rita placed her fingers on the keys and played through the first section. The melody was simple and straightforward. No fancy runs, no dramatic crescendos, no impressive technical passages that would make people gasp. Just a gentle, flowing tune that anyone with 6 months of lessons could probably manage. When she finished, her mom smiled. That's beautiful, honey. Really sweet, sweet. That was exactly the problem. It was sweet. It was nice. It was the kind of thing people would politely clap for before forgetting about it 30 seconds later. Mrs. Liu really picked a lovely piece for you, her mom continued. Rita just nodded. What was she supposed to say? That her teacher had basically given up on her? That this simple assignment felt like a message that Rita wasn't good enough for the challenging stuff? After her mom left, Rita half-heartedly played through the piece twice more. Her fingers moved across the keys automatically, hitting all the right notes without any real thought or feeling behind them. She was going through the motions, nothing more. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. When Rita first started piano lessons, she'd been excited. She'd imagined herself playing grand concerts, her fingers flying across the keys while audiences watched in amazement. She'd pictured herself as one of those musicians who made it look effortless, who could make a piano sing. But somewhere along the way, that dream had faded. Piano had become just another obligation, another item on her weekly schedule between homework and family dinners. She practiced because her mom made her practice. She took lessons because they'd already paid for them. She went to recitals because skipping them wasn't an option. The passion had leaked out of it all, drip by drip, year by year, and now here she was, preparing for yet another recital, playing yet another piece she didn't care about, counting down the days until it would be over, and she could go back to ignoring the piano for a few months. Rita checked the calendar on her phone. The recital was in 12 days. 12 days to practice a piece she could probably play in her sleep. 12 days of dreading the moment when she'd have to sit on that stage and play something so simple, while everyone else showcased their talent. She'd seen the program list that Mrs. Liu had posted in the studio. Some students were playing pieces by famous composers. Others had chosen modern, exciting music with interesting rhythms and harmonies. One girl was even playing something she'd composed herself. And Rita? Rita had a folk melody that probably originated in some small village hundreds of years ago, passed down through generations of people who'd never heard of concert halls or recitals. She played through it one more time before dinner, trying to inject some feeling into it, trying to make it sound more impressive than it was. But it was like trying to make a bicycle look like a sports car. No matter what she did, it was still just a simple tune with simple notes. At dinner, her dad asked about the recital. Getting excited for the big performance? Not really, Rita said, pushing rice around her plate. Why not? You've been working on it for weeks. It's just not that exciting of a piece. Her parents exchanged one of those looks, the kind that said they were having an entire conversation without words. Well, her dad said carefully, sometimes the simple pieces are the most meaningful. Rita doubted that. Simple just meant simple. It meant unchallenging. It meant Mrs. Liu had looked at Rita's abilities and decided she couldn't handle anything more complex. That night, lying in bed, Rita thought about quitting piano altogether. She was 15 now, old enough to make her own decisions about how she spent her time. She could tell her parents she wanted to focus on other things. They might be disappointed, but they'd probably understand. After all, what was the point of continuing something she'd lost all interest in? Something that just made her feel inadequate and frustrated? But even as she thought about quitting, she knew she wouldn't actually do it. Not yet, anyway. Her mom had been so proud when Rita started lessons. Her grandmother had been thrilled, saying how wonderful it was that Rita was learning music. They'd bought her a nice piano for her 13th birthday. They'd sacrificed money and time for her lessons, so she'd keep going. She'd play the simple folk melody at the recital. She'd smile politely when people clapped, and then she'd put in her minimum practice time each week until the next recital rolled around, and the whole cycle repeated itself. This was just how it was now. Piano wasn't a passion anymore. It was a routine, a habit, something she did because stopping seemed harder than continuing. Rita rolled over and pulled her blanket up to her chin. In 12 days, she'd play her simple tune for an audience who would forget it before they even left the auditorium. She'd get through it the same way she got through everything else related to piano these days, with the bare minimum effort required and absolutely no enthusiasm whatsoever. Rita was halfway through her math homework when her mom knocked on her bedroom door. Something about the knock felt different, urgent somehow. "Rita, honey, I need to talk to you." Rita looked up from her textbook. Her mom's face was tight, worried in a way that made Rita's heart speed up. "What's wrong?" "It's Grandma Lily. She's in the hospital. Dad and I are going to go see her right now. Do you want to come with us?" The math book slid off Rita's lap as she jumped up. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She had trouble breathing this afternoon. The doctors are running some tests. They say she's stable now, but they want to keep her overnight for observation." 20 minutes later, Rita was sitting in the back seat of their car, watching the streetlights blur past as they drove to the hospital. Her grandmother was 78 years old and had always seemed so strong, so energetic. The idea of her lying in a hospital bed felt wrong, like the world had tilted sideways. The hospital was bright and cold and smelled like cleaning products. Rita hated it immediately. They found Grandma Lily in a room on the 4th floor, propped up against pillows with tubes connected to her arm. But when she saw them walk in, her face lit up with that same warm smile Rita had known her whole life. "Oh, you didn't need to all come. I'm fine, just a little scared," but she didn't look fine. She looked tired and small in that big hospital bed, and Rita felt a lump form in her throat. They stayed for an hour, talking about ordinary things. Grandma Lily asked about school, about Rita's friends, about the upcoming recital. Rita almost didn't want to mention the recital, but her grandmother asked directly, "Are you excited about your performance? What piece are you playing?" "Just a folk song," Rita said quietly. "Nothing special?" Grandma Lily's eyes got a faraway look. "Folk songs are special. They carry memories. They're like bridges between the past and now." Rita's mom started humming softly, then singing in a language Rita recognized but didn't understand. It was Tagalog, the language her grandmother and mother both spoke fluently but had never fully taught Rita. "I remember Mama singing that when I was little," Grandma Lily said, her voice soft. "She sang it while she cooked, while she cleaned, while she walked me to school." Rita's mom nodded. "You sang it to me too. When I couldn't sleep, when I was scared, when I was happy. That song was always there." Something stirred in Rita's memory, a vague recollection of her grandmother humming while she stirred soup on the stove, the melody drifting through the kitchen along with the smell of garlic and ginger. On the drive home, Rita was quiet. Her dad's phone rang, and after a brief conversation, he told them the doctors wanted to keep Grandma Lily for a few more days to monitor her condition. Nothing too serious, but they wanted to be careful. That night, Rita couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about her grandmother in that hospital bed, looking so fragile. She kept thinking about the song her mom had sung, and how her grandmother's face had softened when she heard it. Finally, she got out of bed and walked downstairs to the piano. It was past midnight and the house was dark except for the small lamp she switched on near the piano bench. She pulled out the sheet music for her recital piece and looked at it again. Really looked at it this time, not just glancing at notes she'd already memorized. The melody started simple and gentle, just like the song her mom had been humming in the hospital. Rita placed her fingers on the keys and began to play, softly so she wouldn't wake anyone. As the notes filled the quiet house, something clicked in her mind. The opening phrase reminded her of mornings at her grandmother's house. The way the melody rose and fell sounded like the rhythm of her grandmother's voice when she told stories. The gentle repetition felt like comfort, like home. Rita stopped playing and stared at the music. This whole time, she'd been so focused on what the piece wasn't. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't the kind of music that would make people think she was talented. But maybe she'd been looking at it all wrong. She started playing again, this time listening to the melody instead of just playing notes. She thought about her grandmother's smile. She thought about traditions passed down through generations. She thought about how something could be simple and still matter deeply. The next morning, Rita went to school in a daze. She couldn't stop thinking about the folk melody. During lunch, instead of sitting with her friends, she went to the library and looked up information about folk music. She learned about how these songs traveled across countries and centuries, changing slightly with each person who sang them, but keeping their heart intact. She discovered that folk melodies were often based on everyday life, on the rhythms of work and family and celebration. They weren't meant to show off technical skill. They were meant to connect people, to carry emotions and memories. After school, Rita asked her mom to take her back to the hospital. She wanted to see Grandma Lily again. Her grandmother was sitting up this time, looking a bit better. Rita sat in the chair beside the bed and held her hand. "Grandma, do you remember any songs from when you were young? From the Philippines?" Grandma Lily's eyes brightened. "Oh, so many songs. My mother knew hundreds of them. She'd sing while she worked in the garden, while she made clothes, while she walked to the market. Can you teach me some?" For the next hour, Grandma Lily hummed and sang fragments of melodies, her voice wavering but warm. Some songs were about love, some about harvest time, some about missing home. Rita recorded them on her phone, capturing her grandmother's voice telling stories between the songs. That evening, Rita sat at her piano with her phone beside her. She played through her recital piece, then listened to one of her grandmother's recordings. The melodies were different, but the feeling was similar. That same gentle quality, that same sense of carrying something precious from one person to another. Rita began experimenting. She played the folk melody as written, but then she tried adding small variations, a slight pause here, a softer touch there. She imagined her great-grandmother in the Philippines singing while she worked. She imagined her grandmother as a young girl learning these songs. She imagined her mom humming them while she rocked Rita as a baby. The piece started to transform under her fingers. It wasn't just notes on a page anymore. It was a story. It was a connection to people she'd never met but whose lives had somehow led to hers. Rita's mom paused outside the living room, listening to her daughter practice. There was something different about the playing tonight, something that made her stop and really listen instead of just hearing background noise. Inside, Rita was lost in the music. Her fingers moved across the keys with a purpose they hadn't had in years. She was still playing the same simple folk melody Mrs. Liu had assigned her. But now she understood what her teacher might have seen in it. This wasn't a punishment or a sign that she wasn't good enough for harder pieces. This was an invitation to find meaning in simplicity, to connect with her roots, to discover that the most powerful music doesn't always come from the most complicated arrangements. For the first time in months, maybe years, Rita wanted to practice. Not because she had to, but because the music meant something now. It had become personal. She played the piece again and then again, each time finding new ways to express the emotions welling up inside her. The recital was still 9 days away. 9 days to turn this simple folk melody into something that honored her grandmother, her heritage, and the long chain of people who had kept these songs alive. Rita smiled as she played, feeling something she'd almost forgotten. She felt connected to her music again, and it felt amazing. The next few days blurred together in a way Rita had never experienced before. She'd wake up thinking about the melody. She'd sit through classes with fragments of the tune running through her head. She'd rush home each afternoon, barely stopping to grab a snack before heading straight to the piano. Her parents noticed the change but didn't say much at first. They'd watch her from the doorway, exchanging quiet glances as Rita played the same piece over and over but differently each time, sometimes soft and tender, sometimes with more strength, sometimes with long pauses that made the silence feel as important as the notes. On the third day after visiting her grandmother, Rita stayed up past midnight working on the piece. She discovered that if she played the opening phrase more slowly, it felt like the beginning of a memory. If she added a slight emphasis on certain notes, it sounded like a question being asked. If she let the final section breathe with space between phrases, it felt like wisdom settling in. Her dad finally knocked on the doorframe around 11:30. "Rita, honey, it's getting late." She looked up, surprised to see him there. "Sorry, I didn't realize what time it was." He walked over and sat on the couch near the piano. "You've been practicing a lot lately. This is the same piece from the recital, right?" Rita nodded. "I'm trying to make it better. It already sounds beautiful, but I'm glad you're enjoying it." After he left, Rita played through it one more time before heading to bed. As she lay in the dark, she thought about all the layers she was discovering in the simple melody. It was like looking at something she'd seen 100 times before, and suddenly noticing details that had always been there but invisible to her. The next afternoon, Rita had her weekly lesson with Mrs. Liu. She'd been dreading it a little, wondering if her teacher would notice all the changes she'd made to the piece. Maybe Mrs. Liu would tell her to stick to what was written on the page. But when Rita finished playing, Mrs. Liu didn't say anything right away. She just sat there with her hands folded in her lap, a small smile on her face. "What made you decide to approach it this way?" she finally asked. Rita wasn't sure how to explain. "My grandmother's been in the hospital and I was thinking about her. And my mom sang this song that reminded me of the folk melody, and I just started hearing it differently." Mrs. Liu nodded slowly. "You know, when I chose this piece for you, I knew it was simple. I knew it might seem too easy, but I could tell you'd been playing without your heart in it for a while now. I thought maybe if you had something that didn't demand all your technical attention, you might find room to actually feel the music again." Rita stared at her teacher. All this time she'd thought the simple assignment was a sign that Mrs. Liu had given up on her. But it had been the opposite. It had been an opportunity. "I was really mad at first," Rita admitted. "I thought you picked it because I wasn't good enough for anything harder." "You're plenty good enough technically," Mrs. Liu said. "But technique without emotion is just finger exercises. I've been teaching piano for 32 years, and I've learned that the students who move people aren't always the ones who can play the fastest or hit the most notes. They're the ones who understand what the music is trying to say." Rita felt something loosen in her chest, something she didn't even know had been tight. "Keep working on it the way you have been," Mrs. Liu continued. "Trust your instincts. The recital is in 6 days, but you're not preparing for a test. You're preparing to share something with people. There's a big difference." Rita left the lesson feeling lighter than she had in months. On the drive home, she asked her mom if they could stop by the hospital to see Grandma Lily. Her grandmother was sitting in a chair by the window when they arrived, looking much stronger than she had a few days ago. The doctor said she could go home tomorrow if her test results stayed good. "I've been working on my recital piece," Rita told her. "It's different now. Better, I think." "I wish I could hear it," Grandma Lily said. "You will. As soon as you're home and feeling up to it, I'll play it for you. Tell me about it. What made you change how you play it?" Rita thought for a moment. "I guess I stopped trying to make it into something it's not. I stopped wishing it was more complicated or more impressive. I just tried to play it honestly." Grandma Lily reached over and squeezed Rita's hand. "That's the best way to do anything, honestly." That weekend, Rita spent hours at the piano. She wasn't just practicing anymore. She was exploring. She discovered that if she started very quietly, almost whispering the notes, the melody felt like a secret being shared. She found that a slight hesitation before the middle section created anticipation. She learned that the ending could feel either peaceful or bittersweet depending on how she voiced the final chord. Her friend Sophie came over on Sunday afternoon. Rita hadn't seen much of her lately, too caught up in her own world of music and discovery. "You've been MIA, Sophie said, flopping onto Rita's bed. "What's going on?" "Just working on the recital piece." "Still?" "I thought you said it was super easy." Rita sat down at the piano. "Want to hear it?" She played it through for Sophie, putting in all the feeling and intention she'd been developing. When she finished, she turned around to see her friend staring at her with wide eyes. Okay, that was actually really beautiful. Like, I got chills. Rita felt a warm glow of pride. Really? Really? I don't know what you did to it, but that didn't sound simple at all. It sounded like a real concert piece. After Sophie left, Rita's mom came into the room. I've been listening to you practice all week, and I need to tell you something. Rita looked up nervously. What? I'm so proud of you. Not because of how the music sounds, though it's lovely, but because you found a way to care again. You've been going through the motions with piano for so long, and I've been worried about it. But this week I've seen you come alive. Rita felt tears prick her eyes. She hadn't realized her mom had noticed her lack of passion. She hadn't known it had been obvious to anyone but herself. I almost quit, Rita admitted. Before all this, I was thinking about telling you I wanted to stop lessons. Her mom sat down beside her on the piano bench. And now? Now I don't know. I think maybe I just needed to remember why music matters. It's not about being the best or playing the hardest pieces. It's about connecting to something deeper. They sat together in silence for a moment, and then Rita's mom started humming one of the songs Grandma Lily had sung in the hospital. Rita listened, memorizing the melody, thinking about how she might incorporate its feeling into her playing. The recital was 5 days away now. 5 days until she'd walk onto that stage and play her simple folk melody in front of an audience. But Rita wasn't dreading it anymore. She wasn't worried about people thinking the piece was too easy or not impressive enough. She was actually excited. That night, she practiced one more time before bed. As her fingers moved across the keys, she thought about her great-grandmother in the Philippines, singing while she worked. She thought about her grandmother learning these songs as a child. She thought about her mother passing them down. And she thought about herself, adding her own voice to a conversation that had been going on for generations. The melody was simple. It had always been simple, but Rita had finally learned that simple didn't mean shallow. Simple could be profound. Simple could carry the weight of history and love and memory. Simple could be exactly what was needed. As she played the final notes and let them fade into silence, Rita smiled. Whatever happened at the recital, she knew she'd already accomplished something important. She'd found her way back to music. She'd discovered that the best performances don't come from showing off what you can do, but from sharing what you feel, and right now, Rita felt more connected to her piano, to her heritage, and to herself than she ever had before. The transformation was complete. Now she just had to share it with the world. The morning of the recital arrived with unexpected sunshine. Rita woke up earlier than usual, her stomach doing small flips. But it wasn't the sick, anxious feeling she'd had before other recitals. This was different. This was anticipation mixed, with nerves, the good kind that made her feel alert and alive. Grandma Lily had come home from the hospital 2 days earlier, and she'd insisted on attending the recital despite everyone's concerns. I wouldn't miss this for anything, she'd said firmly, in that tone that meant there was no point arguing. Rita spent the morning trying to stay calm. She ate breakfast but barely tasted it. She tried to read but couldn't focus on the words. Finally, she sat at the piano and played through her piece twice, just to make sure her fingers remembered what to do. Her dad poked his head into the room. Sounds perfect. You ready for this? I think so. I'm nervous, but in a good way. That's the best kind of nervous. It means you care. By 2 o'clock, Rita and her family were pulling into the parking lot of the community center, where the recital was being held. Other families were arriving too. Kids in fancy clothes clutching sheet music, parents with cameras and flowers. Inside, the auditorium was filling up. Rita could see Mrs. Liu near the stage, organizing things and talking to parents. Other students were warming up in the practice rooms backstage. Rita found an empty room and sat at the upright piano there, playing through scales to keep her fingers loose. Sophie found her a few minutes later. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Are you freaking out? A little, but mostly, I just want to play. I'm going on fourth. My hands are literally shaking. Look. Sophie held out her hands, which were indeed trembling slightly. You're going to do great. You've practiced so much. So have you. I still can't believe how different your piece sounds now. You totally transformed it. Other students came and went from the practice room. Rita recognized most of them from lessons and previous recitals. There was Kevin, who was playing something incredibly fast and complicated. There was Hannah, who always played with perfect technique but sometimes seemed a bit robotic. There was Dylan, who'd been taking lessons for only 3 years but had natural talent that made everything look easy. At 2:30, Mrs. Liu gathered all the students together backstage. Remember, this isn't a competition. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to share music with people who care about you. If you make a mistake, keep going. If you forget a part, improvise. The most important thing is that you stay present and connected to what you're playing. Rita felt those words settle into her chest. Stay present. Stay connected. She could do that. The recital started right on time. Rita sat in the third row with her parents and grandmother, watching as the first student walked onto the stage. It was a young boy, maybe 9 years old, who played a simple Bach minuet. His hands were stiff with nerves and he stumbled over a few notes, but he made it through and smiled with relief when he finished. Then Sophie went up. Rita watched her friend sit at the grand piano, adjust the bench, take a deep breath, and begin. The piece was technically challenging, full of rapid passages and big chords. Sophie played it well, though Rita could see the concentration on her face, the way she was working hard to hit every note correctly. More students performed. Kevin's fast piece was impressive but felt a bit frantic, like he was racing to get through it. Hannah's performance was flawless technically, but left Rita feeling oddly unmoved. Dylan played beautifully, making his difficult piece look effortless. Rita's name was 10th on the program. As the 9th student finished and people applauded, Rita felt her heart rate pick up. This was it. Time to share what she'd discovered, what she'd learned, what she'd felt. She walked onto the stage, very aware of the audience watching her. The auditorium wasn't huge, maybe 150 people, but it felt enormous. She could see her parents in the third row, her dad's phone already up to record. Grandma Lily was sitting between them, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes bright. Rita sat at the piano bench and adjusted it slightly. The grand piano was much nicer than her upright at home. She placed her hands on the keys and felt their smooth coolness against her fingertips. For a moment, she thought about all the times she'd sat at pianos before, dreading performances, wishing they were over before they'd even begun. But not today. Today was different. She took a breath, thought about her great-grandmother singing in the Philippines, and began to play. The opening notes were soft, almost tentative, like someone remembering something from long ago. Rita let each note breathe, gave them space to exist in the room. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't worried about the audience. She was simply telling a story. As the melody developed, she felt herself relax into the music. Her fingers knew what to do. All those hours of practice had prepared her body, but more importantly, all that thinking and feeling had prepared her heart. She played the middle section with more strength, the melody rising like someone growing up, facing challenges, becoming who they were meant to be. Then she pulled back for the final section, letting the melody return to its simple roots, but now carrying all the complexity of experience. Something strange happened as Rita played. She stopped being aware of the audience. She stopped thinking about what people might be thinking. She was just inside the music, living in each moment, each phrase, each note. She didn't notice that the usual fidgeting sounds from the audience had stopped. She didn't see several parents lower their phones and just listen. She didn't notice Mrs. Liu standing at the side of the stage with tears in her eyes. Rita was simply playing, pouring everything she'd learned and felt into this simple folk melody. She played for her great-grandmother, whom she'd never met. She played for Grandma Lily, sitting in the audience after her scare in the hospital. She played for her mother, who'd passed down songs and stories. She played for herself, for the girl who'd almost given up on music but found her way back. The final phrase came, and Rita played it with tender certainty. These were the last notes, the ending of the story, but also a promise that the melody would continue, passed on to whoever needed to hear it next. She held the final chord, letting it resonate through the auditorium, feeling the vibrations under her fingers. Then she slowly lifted her hands from the keys and let the silence settle. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was completely still. completely quiet. Rita looked up, suddenly aware of where she was again, wondering if something was wrong. Then she saw her grandmother's face. Grandma Lily had tears running down her cheeks, and she was smiling, the biggest smile Rita had ever seen. And then the applause started. It wasn't the polite, automatic clapping that usually followed student recital performances. It started as a few people, then spread like a wave through the whole auditorium. People were actually applauding with enthusiasm, not just going through the motions. Rita stood up and gave a small bow, feeling dazed. The applause continued. She glanced at Mrs. Liu, who was nodding with approval and still wiping her eyes. As Rita walked off the stage, her legs felt shaky but strong at the same time. She'd done it. She'd played her simple folk melody, and somehow, impossibly, people had really listened. Sophie grabbed her arm as soon as she came backstage. "Oh my God, Rita, that was incredible. Like, actually incredible. People were crying." Rita couldn't quite process it yet. "Really?" "Yes. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard at a student recital. I'm not even joking." Rita sat down in a chair backstage, her heart still pounding. Through the stage door, she could hear the next student beginning their piece. But she was still floating in the aftermath of her own performance, trying to understand what had just happened. She'd played a simple tune, just a folk melody, nothing technically impressive, nothing that would make piano teachers marvel at her skill. But somehow, it had meant something. It had connected with people in a way she'd never experienced before, and that, Rita realized, was the whole point. Rita stayed backstage for the rest of the recital, but she barely heard the other performances. Her mind kept replaying her own, trying to understand what had happened out there. Had it really been as good as Sophie said? Or was her friend just being nice? When the last student finished and Mrs. Liu thanked everyone for coming, Rita walked back out to find her family. But before she could reach them, a woman she didn't know approached her. "Excuse me, are you the girl who played the folk melody?" Rita nodded, suddenly shy. "Yes, that was me." The woman's eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "I just wanted to tell you that was extraordinary. My mother passed away last year, and she used to sing a song very similar to that when I was little. Hearing you play brought back so many memories. Thank you." Before Rita could respond, the woman squeezed her hand and walked away. Rita stood there stunned. Then another parent came up. "That was beautiful. Really moving. My daughter's been taking lessons for 5 years, and I keep telling her it's not about playing the hardest music. It's about playing with feeling. You showed that perfectly today." More people approached as Rita made her way through the crowd. A father said it was the highlight of the recital. A grandmother said she'd gotten chills. Another student from Mrs. Liu's studio said she wanted to learn to play with that much emotion. Rita finally reached her family. Her dad pulled her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." Her mom was crying, which made Rita's own eyes water. "That was incredible, honey. I don't even have words." But it was Grandma Lily who held Rita the longest. When they finally pulled apart, her grandmother's face was wet with tears, but she was smiling. "You know what you did up there?" Grandma Lily said softly. "You didn't just play music. You honored everyone who came before you. You took something simple and showed everyone that simple can be sacred. That's a gift, Rita. A real gift." Rita felt something break open inside her chest, something warm and overwhelming. "I was playing it for you, Grandma. For you and for everyone in our family who sang these songs before I was even born. I know. I felt it, every single note." Mrs. Liu found Rita before they left. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" They stepped away from the crowd, and Mrs. Liu put both hands on Rita's shoulders. "Do you understand what you did today?" "I think so, maybe. I'm still trying to figure it out." "You moved people. Really moved them. I've been teaching for over 3 decades, and I can count on one hand the number of student performances that made me cry. Yours was one of them." Rita felt her cheeks flush. "I just played what I felt." "Exactly. That's what made it special. You know, there was a time when I worried you were going to quit piano. You were so disconnected from it, just going through the motions. But something changed in you these past few weeks. My grandma got sick, and it made me think about things differently, about what actually matters." Mrs. Liu nodded. "Sometimes we need those moments to wake us up, to remind us why we do what we do. You could spend years learning to play faster, to handle more complex pieces, to master difficult techniques, and those things have value. But what you demonstrated today is something that can't be taught. It comes from here. She touched her hand to her chest. From the heart. As they drove home, Rita sat in the back seat with her grandmother holding her hand. Nobody said much. The car was full of a comfortable, satisfied silence. That evening, Rita's phone buzzed constantly. Sophie had posted about the recital on social media, and friends from school were messaging. "I didn't know you were so good at piano. That was amazing. You should post a video." But the message that meant the most came from Kevin, the boy who'd played the lightning-fast technical piece. "Hey, I just wanted to say your performance was really beautiful. I've been so focused on playing difficult stuff to impress people, but watching you made me realize I've forgotten to actually feel the music. You inspired me." Rita read the message 3 times, amazed that she could inspire anyone, let alone someone as technically skilled as Kevin. Later that night, Grandma Lily asked if Rita would play the piece for her again, just the 2 of them. They went into the living room and Rita sat at her piano while her grandmother settled on the couch. This time playing felt different. There was no stage, no audience, no pressure. Just Rita and her grandmother and the simple folk melody that had changed everything. As Rita played, she saw her grandmother close her eyes, a peaceful expression on her face. When the last note faded, Grandma Lily sat quietly for a moment before speaking. "When I was your age, my mother tried to teach me songs from her childhood. But I was too busy, too focused on other things. I thought those old songs didn't matter. By the time I realized how much they meant, she was gone and I'd forgotten most of them." Rita's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, Grandma. Don't be sorry. Just learn from my mistake. The things that connect us to where we came from, to who we are, those are the things worth holding on to. You figured that out at 15. It took me until I was 50. Is that why you were crying at the recital?" Grandma Lily smiled. "I was crying because I heard my mother in your playing. I heard my grandmother. I heard myself as a young girl. You took something simple and made it carry all of our stories. That's powerful magic, Rita." They sat together in the dim living room and Grandma Lily began to tell stories. Stories about the Philippines, about her childhood, about songs and traditions and the way music wove through everything. Rita listened, recording some of it on her phone, wanting to preserve these memories. The next morning at school, Rita felt different. She walked through the hallways with her head a little higher. Not because she was proud or showing off, but because something fundamental had shifted inside her. She discovered that she was good at something, not because she could play faster or more technically than others, but because she could make people feel. In the weeks that followed, Rita's relationship with piano continued to change. She still practiced, but now it felt like a conversation instead of a chore. She started exploring other folk melodies, looking up traditional songs from different cultures. She learned pieces from Ireland, from Japan, from Brazil, each one teaching her something new about the power of simplicity. Mrs. Liu gave her more challenging pieces too, but now Rita approached them differently. She didn't just focus on hitting the right notes. She thought about what emotions each piece was trying to convey, what story it was telling. 3 months after the recital, a local music teacher Rita had never met called Mrs. Liu. She'd been in the audience that day and wondered if Rita might be interested in a summer program for young musicians. Not a technical boot camp, but a program focused on musical expression and composition. Rita said yes without hesitation. She also started helping some of the younger students in Mrs. Liu's studio, showing them how to find feeling in their music, not just accuracy. One little boy told her she made piano fun again. A girl said Rita helped her stop being so scared of making mistakes, but the biggest change was simply this. Rita loved piano again, not the way she had as a little kid, with big fantasies about concert halls and fame. She loved it in a deeper, quieter way. She loved it because it connected her to people, to her past, to emotions she couldn't express any other way. One evening, about 6 months after the recital, Rita sat at her piano and pulled out that same simple folk melody. She played it through and it sounded different again. Not better or worse than the recital performance, just different. Because she was different. She'd grown. She'd learned. She'd changed. And she realized that's what music was supposed to do. It was supposed to grow with you, change with you, reflect who you were in each moment. She thought about the girl she'd been just months ago, sitting at this same piano, resenting a simple assignment, ready to quit. That girl had thought music was about impressing people, about being the best, about playing the most complicated pieces. but she'd learned something more important. She'd learned that music was about truth, about connection, about taking something simple and filling it with meaning. The folk melody had taught her that. One simple tune had changed everything. Rita's fingers moved across the keys one more time, playing the melody that had become a part of her story. And as the notes filled the room, she smiled, grateful for the unexpected journey that had brought her here. Sometimes the simplest things carry the deepest truths. Sometimes what looks like nothing special turns out to be everything that matters. And sometimes when you're told to play a simple tune, you discover that simplicity itself can be a kind of glory.